Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Results Mastery podcast. It's great to have you here. If you've been here before and you've listened to me before, then thanks for coming back. And if you're new, it's great to have you here. My name is Steve Mills. I'm very lucky to have a guest with me today whose name is Debbie Bryan. Now, Debbie is a mentor. She's a high ticket speaker. She's a TEDx speaker, which is, I want to ask her about that because I think that's just a fantastic achievement that she's achieved. And she's also a business strategist. So, welcome, Debbie. It's great to have you here. Thank you ever so much for your time, and I'm really excited to listen to what you've got to say. Do you want to kick off by just telling people? I know I've given a little overview, but a little bit more about you and what you do, please.
Well, thank you, Steve, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be on. So, tell you a little bit more about myself. So, I actually started as a coach around about 25 years ago in a call center,
Okay.
and then got made redundant from the call center, and then managed more businesses from there. So I've been in that kind of arena of like looking after businesses, having my own businesses, and looking after businesses and CEOs and entrepreneurs for quite a long time, and seen quite a lot of changes.
Okay.
Um, I always wanted, when I was going to events, I always used to look at the speakers and think, I want to do what you're doing. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but I kind of want to be up there, but never really was wanted to admit that because I had very much an imposter sitting on my shoulder going, who's going to listen to Debbie from Swindon? And
Yeah.
actually, the first time someone asked me to speak, I was very, who's going to listen to Debbie from Swindon? I was really intimidated in the room. And so it was only probably about 4 or 5 years ago that I kind of got this bug of wanting to be a speaker, wanting to get up there and talk, but wanting to be a certain type of speaker. And I was an awful speaker. I was terrible. I was so fast because I didn't want to take up people's time. I would speak all in one breath. So I was nearly falling over by the time I finished. I would blush. Oh my goodness, like, in my 50s, still blushing. And then I would finish really abruptly, like, okay, it's over. And people just look at me all surprised as if to go,
Question, please. Oh,
don't
oh,
know what to do. Yeah, there was no end to it and stuff like that. So to be honest, it's really surprising that they gave me a TEDx. To be
no,
honest, I'm not
I
quite
know
sure how that
exactly
worked.
where you're coming from. I'll just tell you briefly about my first experience speaking. As you know, I used to play table tennis at international level, and I used to earn quite a bit of my money, a good like 75% of my money in the summer doing table tennis exhibitions all around the country, around the holiday camps. Anyway, one day I'm at Pontins, Camber Sands, near Hastings. We're in the main ballroom. We've got about 5,000 people watching this exhibition. Okay. And 2 minutes before we're due to go on, the guy who used to come round with me, who was the compere on the microphone, got an emergency phone call to go to reception urgently. So he said to me, right, you're going to have to do the comparing, and we're going to get Alan, the guy that was with me, to do the playing.
Mm.
Whilst I was very confident playing table tennis in front of loads of people because I could do it, I had to go out there in front of 5,000 people with 2 minutes notice. And I've always said
Sometimes the best way, right?
nothing
Sometimes the best
ever
way.
could be more scary than that day. And I sort of got through it a little bit like you, Debbie. I probably ummed and erred too much and, was a little bit nervous to say the least. I felt my legs were just going to jelly as I was walking
Oh, tell
out.
me.
So, yeah.
I just would, like, I would always blush and go red. And I still had this whole, I was speaking in London. I was working with like an events company where we were teaching social media. So I could teach people in the room
Yeah.
and, do a workshop. But when it came to actually standing up, and at that time, my coach used to say to people, would you like to hear from one of my clients? Would you like to hear from somebody? So he'd put me at the front of the room and go, here you go, here's a microphone. And yeah, that was kind of, I suppose, my deathly induction. And so what I did was I made not made a story up, but I created a story. So I
Uh-huh.
created a story about how I'd worked with him and how that had benefited me in terms of like winning a very big contract afterwards. And so I had this kind of persona that could go up and speak, but it was never about me. It
Right.
was very much like, this is what I'm going to try out, to the point we went to a venue in Leeds, and I think there was 400 people in the room. That was kind of the biggest audience, and I could tell this story.
Yeah.
So I kind of took the microphone, and afterwards, there were 3 or 4 of us that kind of took the stage. After somebody said, "We thought you were actors," so it got so slick.
Right.
They thought that we were hired actors
Yeah.
to
Fantastic.
promote, which is a shame, really. So it kind of gave me that confidence, but then it took all my confidence away about talking about myself.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then that was quite scary to then have to go and talk about something that
What
wasn't
would
about
your,
business.
yeah, what would your, for somebody who's listening today and thinking, oh wow, yeah, I'd love to be like Debbie and be able to speak in front of audiences, or whether that's just like because they're doing that as part of their business, or whether they'd like to be a professional speaker. What would, I don't know, your best advice be for somebody like that?
So I think you have to feel confident about what you're speaking about. So if you're the best person to do speaking about your business is always you. There's no one else that is better than you to talk about your business because you've grown this business, you're passionate about it, you dream it, live it. So you're the absolute best person to go up and speak. They call it founder marketing now, is that the person who's founded the business is the face of the business. And that's very 2025, 2026. Anybody who's trying to be too professional and pre-recorded and getting other people to talk it, going to be less successful because people want to buy from people. So my biggest tip is to get the clarity on what it is that who you help, how you help, and why you.
Mm,
That's the 3 things that if you can understand that, and that's for anything. That's if you're coming on a podcast, if you're going to a networking event, or you're standing on stage. If you can really quickly let people know who you are, what you do, and who you help,
mm,
then you'll polarize the audience. You'll become magnetic because they'll be like, I need to listen to this person because she's talking to me.
yeah.
I did a lot of digital marketing prior to the lockdown, and so we build ads with that top line, that interrupting the scroll type thing. And so speaking is a little bit like that. Really, it's like getting people's attention, getting the 20% that are interested, and repelling the people who are not interested. So it's very much about the clarity of your message, but also not being frightened to understand that most of the room are not your people.
Yeah. Okay.
There's more in-depth stuff than that, but that's kind of that very first thing, is to get up there and have something to talk about that you love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get that. Okay, so TEDx. For those of you who don't know of TEDx, and I suspect that's probably about 5% of people, most people will have heard of TEDx. It's my perception of it is it's probably the world's biggest platform as a speaker to get on. They take the best of the best and they give them the opportunity to go and speak on a TEDx stage. And I think I'm right in saying, Debbie, they're in various countries, or every country.
Everywhere around the world now, there are TEDx. So there's TED Talks and there's TEDx. So TEDx, a regional, and the TED Talks would be, say, like London and New York.
Right.
So there's slightly different. There's a different format to them.
Oh,
So why did I do a TED Talk? So
oh,
it's a
how?
funny. It's
Why and how? I
Well, so
understand
first
the
of all,
why.
the why.
Great, but
I, I
yeah.
wanted to be a speaker, so I'd left the corporate events and stuff that I was doing, and I was then trying to find my feet and what I was talking about. So first of all, I way back like 15 years ago had a car accident. I was a hairdresser at the time, so I was a hairdresser with a very badly broken leg. Couldn't walk for 6 months, and then eventually was told by my doctors that I would be in a wheelchair at 55. I'm 57 now, but I would be in a wheelchair at 55, which was terrifying. But as far as I was concerned, that wasn't going to happen to me. That was the rules for other people, but it wasn't the rules for me. So I came out of the salon, built bigger salons, bigger businesses, and ultimately had other stuff going on that didn't mean that I was going to stand behind the chair, because that was one of the problems. So all this time trying to avoid being in the wheelchair. So on a whim, I was just like, in the spirit of use it before you lose it, my friend said, do you want to do this bike ride in India? And I thought, well, yeah, why don't I have the adventure now, as opposed to when I'm in a wheelchair and won't necessarily be able to do it. So I just signed up one Saturday morning. I signed up, I paid the deposit, 500 quid, and we were away for 12 days. And so I looked at, the itinerary for 12 days, 370 kilometers. That's about 25K a day. Anyone can do that. Until I get the pack and realize that we're only cycling for 5 days. And actually, the first day was like 84 kilometers. The next was 100.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
oh my God, what have I done? But I paid my deposit now and I'm in, and I've told people that I'm doing it. So I was like, okay, I just need to plan. And as I was doing it, I didn't talk very much about it. I paid for it. I didn't do it as a charity thing. I was very frightened that, somewhere in the universe, this wheelchair was waiting for me. And if I mentioned it, they'll go, it's for her, and send it to me. So I was like, don't talk about it. But some people did say to me they would sponsor me. And I hadn't got a sponsorship. And then someone let my local radio station know about it. And so they invited me down to the local radio and wanted to know the story behind why I was doing this bike ride. And when I went down there, I discovered some really good work that they do. And I decided that was my place for being sponsored. So they deal with like young adults with autism and special needs, and they were doing some amazing work with them. And because it's all voluntary, all the money goes to them. It doesn't go into a
Great.
pot.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. So then I started to do some fundraising, and then people had heard the story. So I got started, people asking me to go on to podcasts and different stuff. So I had this revelation then that actually people didn't want to hear about the £1 million stuff. They wanted to hear about real life stuff. They wanted this. I very much felt like I just did what anybody else would do. As far as I was concerned, everybody would fight with their surgeon when they say, 3 top surgeons in the UK that said I'd be in a wheelchair. I was like, that's not happening to me. Apparently what happens is that most people go home and start building a ramp and adapting and getting ready for it. And that wasn't anything to do with my criteria. So all of a sudden I've got this following of people that are really interested in the bike ride and the reasons for it. And somebody sent me a message to say, you've just changed my life. I've had breast cancer and thought I should feel ill for the rest of my life. And I've started to question it. So I've had a checkup and I'm fine and I'm living my best life. And I was like, God, I never realized it was going to have that type of impact, because I'd been in this very arena of like talking about business and selling and all that sort of stuff. So I felt like it was a bit unimportant, really, to be talking about something that's just life. But that became something that people were more interested in. I ended up on like 50 podcasts. So I thought, okay, let me see how I can transfer this into paid speaking. So I go and ask some paid speakers what they did to get to where I thought I wanted to be. One of them said to me, right, go and talk to the WI and the schools and the universities. They'll be horrible to you. And after a year, someone might pay you. Oh, and also go and get a show reel. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a lot. And then another one was like, well, I traveled the country for 5 years, going to events that I wanted to speak at and to meet the organisers. And sometimes the speaker didn't turn up. And that's where I got my opportunities. And I was like, well, that's also like, those two were not kind of, I don't have time for that. I'm in my 50s. So I was like, okay, I kind of believe that life is like a game of snakes and ladders. So I'm like, okay, where's my ladder? Where's the thing that's going to pivot me without having to go all the way around the board like these guys did? And I decided that a TEDx would pivot me further up the board.
Sure.
So that's kind of, I set my sights on this TEDx. I went and like interviewed people who'd done TEDx's, and still doing like talking about my stuff, still feeling like a bit of fluff, really, because I'm talking about riding a bike around India and just real life. Nothing I didn't think was particularly outstanding, but people loved it. And that was my story that I submitted. So when the TEDx came along, I had 3 TEDx's that had taken applications, and when I looked into them, they just geographically and time-wise didn't work. I'm happy to travel, but they just didn't. They were like Arizona, Montana, and Australia. And then the next month, there was another application that came through, and it was TEDx Western U London. So I was like, okay, my head works in a weird way. So I was like, if I don't fill that form in, it's definitely a no. So the best thing I can do is fill the form in, and it becomes a maybe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I did it on an absolute punt.
Yeah.
And then literally had an email about 2 weeks later. My mum was in hospital. It was a terrible day. And I come home from the hospital and was looking at my emails, and I was like, started screaming. My husband thought, what's happened? His mum died. I was like, no, it was better than this. I was on the ceiling because I was having an interview with the TEDx team. And it was only then that I discovered that it was Eastern Standard Time, and that there is a London in Canada, in Ontario in Canada. And that was where they had accepted me. So I was like, okay, because it's all academies in London, right? I don't know what the unions are called anymore. So TEDx Western U is London, Ontario, basically Toronto. You fly into Toronto. So I was like, do you know what? A yes is a yes. We're going. My husband said, don't worry, we'll pack jumpers. In my head, I thought, it's February, the flights are cheap. So that was that really. You kind of go through a process with the TED people where they coach you. And even though they accept you for what you put in as your proposal, they then spend time trying to change it for you and put it into. And I had a couple of the students from the university that were helping me were amazing. But yeah, they kind of help you for about 2 months. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I've been accepted for this TEDx.
I mean,
It was like,
I'm a speaker myself, and I know, it's like, I suppose my dream in a way. But guess
mm,
what? How much effort have I put into being a 10x speaker?
see, don't feel the 4 minutes, definitely a no. So
Never.
that's kind of,
I'm not someone who doesn't feel confident, but I've just never. I don't know. I suppose I had the confidence to do it, and you did. So, big credit to you. I love what you said a few minutes ago that, if I don't apply, the answer's no. If I do
mm,
apply, the answer's maybe. And that's the case in most things, isn't it? In
it is.
sales,
Yeah,
in life, if back when I was single, if I didn't go up to that lady and say, hi,
exactly.
Steve,
Then
she
you're going to watch her go home with somebody else. It could have
everywhere.
been the love of your life. So, um,
Uh, and I can remember quite a long time in my 20s doing that, looking at somebody thinking, oh, she's lovely. Well, I better not go over. She might turn me down.
I think we're brought up to be afraid of the word no.
Yeah, we are.
I think that's something that is, like if you look at my grandson's just been here actually, and if he's doing something we're like no, it's very much a nasty word, the word no. And I think
Yeah,
like you and I have both been in sales, and so we're a bit less afraid of the word no. We kind of accept it
yeah,
as that's part of the deal.
yeah,
Just how many no's do we have to do to get a
well,
yes? And
yeah.
so
Yes, as you.
um
Yeah, 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 definitely.
I was just lucky, but I had this fear. So I did know some people who had been doing TED Talks, and I also knew people that had been disqualified. So they'd done the TED, they'd actually gone and stood on the stage and done it, and then been disqualified afterwards. So I had that fear with
How do
me
you
of
get
going
qualified? What's
because they don't follow the rules on the day. So
all
TED are very so when you go for it, I'm very verbal, so I could
right?
speak and tell them what I was going to do, but they want it written. So you have to then write the speech. They want to see what's there. So if you're
Okay,
if you're going to produce some facts, you have to be able to verify them. If
right.
you're talking about yourself, then obviously there's nothing to verify.
But
So I was very lucky that I was talking about myself.
yeah,
But if you are talking about something else, then sometimes because you've got the main TED is like the head office, and they're helping all these satellites, the TEDx's, to
okay.
do that. So if they misinterpret the rules, so I'll give you an example. In my headline, it was impossible to possible. No, no doesn't mean no. It just means you're asking the wrong person. They very much didn't like that. No doesn't mean no.
All right.
They
Okay.
very much didn't like it, even though I was like, well, actually, I'm saying to you, it's not a date rape thing because I'm not telling the person their no is not valid. I'm just saying that's not the person for me.
Yeah.
And I'd also put, and I stole this from someone else, was get used to hearing more of a full-bodied yes. And they were like, can you take full-bodied yes out? Because there might be people in the audience that aren't full-bodied. And I was like, I'm talking about disability, but it wasn't important enough for me
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say to fight with. I was like, okay, it's fine, it can go, like take it out. So
Yeah.
there's some things that are really sensitive. There was a lady who on the day had so I know a couple of people since then, but there was somebody that I'd known that I think maybe she'd had a phone in her pocket and it was something that wasn't allowed, and so they didn't allow the TEDx to go out. So she was invited to go somewhere else and redo it. And for me, I'd invested my ego in telling everybody that I
Yeah.
was going for a TED,
Remember.
also invested in flights, in hotels, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, everything. I put everything on the line. So I was really scared. And it wasn't until the week before I told my coaches and said, well, I'm just really worried this could happen. And they were like, oh my gosh, you were the first person that we picked. Every part of the judging committee loved your story
Hey.
and loved what you were saying. So you were never, and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe you could have told me that 2 months ago, would have been nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes you need that fear,
You
right?
do.
You
You
need that
do.
that for me, I do
Like
sometimes
going
need
to the
that.
next level, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
sport, competing at, you play something in a local league and then you get called up to the county team, and all of
Mm.
a sudden you think, oh, I'm not sure I'm good enough. And then one day you get to represent your country and you think, oh, I'm
Yeah,
playing.
I mean, the imposter sits with all of us, doesn't it? I know,
It's a natural.
and that's the funny thing is I did the TED Talk on the Friday, and then in my head, speakers were like the people who are earning 20 grand for a keynote. And because I knew TED Talkers between 12 and 20, a guy that I worked with, Corey Poirier, he's done 4 TED Talks now and he commands a really big fee.
Yeah.
And the day after, I was like, oh, can I call myself a speaker now?
Mm.
Like the day after I'd stood on the stage on the red circle, like, can I call myself a speaker? I remember thinking to myself, I thought, oh my gosh, Deb, like, what else do you want? What else do you want to
How much
verify?
more can you be?
Yeah, what else do you
Credibility,
want? Do
can
you want
you?
to be? But
Yeah.
also, my nature is such that in the beginning, so it was February, it was that January, I was like, how do I top a TED talk? And I had to stop myself and go, why don't you just enjoy this process? Really immerse yourself in this process and then worry about how you top a TED talk after that.
Yeah.
As such, on the Saturday, I wrote to a load of speaking agencies and got signed up. So I was like,
Yeah.
what's next?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was like, it's the single career wise, it's the absolute best thing I've ever done
Yeah.
in speaking.
If you enjoy it, and I know a lot of people, I think I've read somewhere where speaking in front of people is like the number one fear, of people fear speaking more than dying, or
Yeah,
or anything like that, being eaten by crocodiles and things. But if you enjoy it, it is really exhilarated, isn't it? It's a fantastic.
it's addictive. It's very addictive. So once you get past that, so for me, the blushing thing was a big thing. And I remember speaking one time and I was like, oh, I'm blushing. And my coach at the time literally screamed at me and went, I won't repeat his words, but he was like, no one cares. No
No,
one cares that you're blushing. Just shut up. We're interested in what you've got to say.
yeah,
And I never stopped blushing, but I never ever mentioned it ever again. Never mentioned it
no.
ever. And then eventually it did stop
I think
because it
that
wasn't
is a
something.
mistake that a lot of people make. I've seen it so many times. Especially at these like networking events, they stand up and they go, "Oh, hi, my name's Fred Bloggs. I'm not really very good at speaking in front of people, but I'm here to tell you about this." And it's like, it's
They
like
wouldn't know,
saying,
yeah.
I'm rubbish, but I'm, I'm doing it
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm going to take your time up. I'm
But
not.
I
I don't
really
even
can't
think
do
I'm
it.
good enough to listen to. So, that's when people get their phones out and stuff like. You've got to have like, and I've learned. Obviously, it's a year and a bit, but you've got to have some swagger. I mean, sometimes, there's never a stage that I get onto that I'm not afraid. I think you saw me first time speaking at the Global Author
I
Awards
did.
when we were in London, and that was my very first time I'd ever spoken. And I think I just said that I was really lucky to still be alive after the accident, etc. When I look back now, I cringe. I just think, oh, God,
Mm.
what was I doing? But that was my first time, and I know my voice was shaky.
I tell
It
you
was,
what, I was there and I would have never known that that was your
oh,
first.
really?
No,
My
no,
first time
no
about
way.
me.
I thought you'd done loads of these, you were,
No,
oh, wow,
not
wow.
this time.
That's
That was
interesting.
my first. My first one, like actual talking about me and not a business, not about something else. Because that's the bit that for me was a big, big difference of the imposter syndrome, and also like I'm known for helping businesses and coaching and
Yeah,
stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, I'm talking about something with feelings. Hello, feelings of like nearly dying, spending 6 months. I mean, 6 months I spent as a hairdresser in a gym, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't even put my foot on the ground. I was
yeah.
total non-weight bearing on that leg for 6 months trying to run a hair salon. That was very tough. You don't fit into your own life, and
Oh,
so that adaptability, and um, then thinking that I'd got better, going to see these free top surgeons because it was a car accident. So they wanted me to go to court, and they were all three of them went, you deserve everything because you're going to be in a wheelchair at 55. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be in a wheelchair at 55. And so then when I did the bike ride, I'd learned how to, I chunked it down. Like, there's a whole story on that basically of like the motivation to do this bike ride that I was terrified of. Like so terrified that I was going to fail, that I was going to come back in a wheelchair. I
yeah.
got to the stage where I could cycle 50 miles from not being able to cycle like hardly at all. I don't even know how to change gears. I don't know how to change a chain. I cycled in flipping see-through pants for for months without realizing that they were undershorts for cycling and cycling shorts. And I cycled in the undershorts without knowing, hundreds of miles around the Cotswolds. So I wasn't a cyclist, even though I was in the gym, I wasn't knowledgeable about what I was doing. And I got to India and I was like, I know I can do 50 miles for one day. And
Yeah.
now I've got to do it 5 times. And you know, when you've been in professional sport, that
Yeah.
momentum of keeping it going. I'm in India. What if I get the Delhi belly? What if like, and
Yeah.
even the first time I got on my bike, I was so nervous to get on the bike, and there was just 12 of us in this group, and they all done it before. So I
Yeah.
pushed my bike around the corner. This hotel had like a circular driveway, and I pushed my bike around by this van. Got on, I was dead wobbly, and they told me that they'd seen how wobbly I was at the end of the week. And I went to move the handlebars, didn't turn. Like with the wheel turned, because it was a brand new bike, they hadn't put it together, so the handlebars weren't screwed on. So I was like, oh God. So I was like, then let's go back, say that the bike's not watching. So of course, then when I cycled, everybody was watching to see if my bike was working. My absolute worst nightmare was all these professional people watching me wobble on a bike and
Wow.
thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do with her for the rest of the week? And then even they took us out onto the road. So they're like, right, we're just going to do 15 minutes on a road in India. You know,
Yeah.
like everything you could possibly think in India, the tuk-tuks,
Yeah.
the camels,
Cars and
the
bikes
cows in the middle of the road,
and
the motorbikes coming towards you down the
yeah.
cycle lane on your side of the road with 5 people and they're watching on like everything. And I'm cycling along this road, and all of a sudden the handlebars start turning, and I'm ending up like this, like claws, unable to stop and use the brakes. And we just went off down this little track, a little bumpy, and the guy'd come over to me and said, "What's the matter? I can't stop. Like I can't stop." I couldn't. It just they hadn't put the bike together properly. So I was like,
Yeah.
"This what have I put myself in for?" That was probably more terrifying than the TED.
Nightmare. I want to find out because we were talking just before we started about an event that you're running. So
Yeah,
I thought it'd be really useful for you to be able to promote the event, but more importantly, really for people listening to be able to access your event. So do you want to just give like 2 or 3 minute overview of the event, what they're
yeah.
going to learn, what the cost is, and how they sign up for the event, please.
Okay. So the event is called Unlock Your £1 Million Message, Show the Real You. So what I learned is that you have to be you. You can't, there's a huge amount of speaking and getting people to run to the back of the room and empty their credit card and stuff like that. If you wanted that type of coaching and mentoring, don't come to me. I'm not that person. I
Yeah,
don't believe I want people to be real and authentic and be magnetic. So by magnetic, I want you to be able to stand up and say, like for yourself, what you're passionate about your business and how you help people and who you are, and for people to then come to you because they trust you. I don't want a part of the other speaking. It's just something that just doesn't sit with me. So I'm very much seeing in networking and in business is that people are the best kept secret. So you're great in your industry, absolutely probably the best person in your industry, but nobody actually knows that because you don't have a message that tells you that.
I
And
see
so what
that.
happens is somebody who's not as good as you is walking off with all the trophies.
Yeah,
They're walking off with your clients
yeah,
and they're walking off with all the glory. So this workshop is really, it's not necessarily about you making £1 million. It's about finding out your real story and positioning it. So it's not a case of that you're invisible. In the past, I felt invisible, but it was because I wasn't speaking and people didn't know what I did. One of the things that the TED did for me is it positioned me as a speaker. So people know if they want someone to help them with speaking, come to me. Whereas before I could do everything, but not known for anything really. So this is about getting you. So if you're like looking at clients and going, why did they not want to work with me? If you're not closing, if you're going to networking and people and you're not coming away with calls booked and stuff, this training is for you because you'll come away with a magnetic message that you can use in your social media, you can use when you're networking, or you can use when you're just introducing yourself.
yeah,
You'll come away with some confidence and a story that tells a story of why you're doing what you're doing and how you can help people. And it's very there's a structure of like I can speak now and I'm very confident, but I wasn't always like that. And so your story is your journey and then how you can help somebody else, and a framework so that you can literally show up and be comfortable in what you're doing. So that's what the workshop's about. It's a 90-minute workshop. It's
Yeah.
on the 1st of July. It's going to be a virtual workshop. And I'll drop the link. It's on Eventbrite.
Okay.
So for anybody who's listening to this, if they use the code Steve Mills, then it's £20 plus the Eventbrite thing. You'll get £10 off.
Okay. Fantastic.
So if they want to come along, it's not, you will learn something. I'm not about doing a webinar and then you come and I'm going to kill you with slides. This is really taking what I've learned. And I've used this with a lot of my clients, one of them of which has just got a TEDx this week, but we're not allowed to tell anybody.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of people TEDx's. Pardon?
I
I
said,
know.
you
I
have
was
to kill me.
I just had this voicemail from him screaming down the phone at me and going so excited.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I was like, can we put this out? And he's like, no, not yet. We have to wait a little while.
Yeah.
But I've got, I've helped other people get TED Talks, but the thing is with the TED Talk is it's very hit and miss. There can be, some people go for 100 applications and some people do it in 10 applications. There's lots to go over, and I will go over that a little bit in the talking of
Okay.
the TED, really, just because there's specific things that they want. For example, they don't normally ask about business, they don't want religion, they don't want spiritual, they don't like any of that because it's not quantifiable unless you can make it quantifiable. So so that's the workshop. Really happy if anybody comes along to that, because you get great value.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, I know Debbie. We've known each other for quite a while. She's part of a group that I work with on LinkedIn, helping businesses and getting our message out even more. I can fully vouch for her. So get yourself signed up. It's 20 quid. It's online. You don't even have to travel anywhere. So I'm sure you'll get some real value out of it if you're interested in speaking and specifically improving the way you do it, which we all need to do. If we're called to do that, perhaps at a wedding or stand in front of your team in your business, or at a networking event, or perhaps like Debbie would like to be speaking on stages all over the world. So either way, I'm sure you'll gain loads from that. So it just sort of leaves me to thank you, Debbie. Thank you ever so much. It's been really interesting listening and talking to you. Really enjoyed it. If somebody wants to find out that not necessarily about the seminar, but like to know more from you, maybe hire you as a speaker, where do they go? What's the website there, Debbie?
So if they go to debbiebryan.com, there's an opportunity on there to book a call with me. So you can book a free 15-minute call. So if you want to book me as a speaker, my media pack is on there. If you want to find out more about becoming a speaker, you're not available for the workshop, then again, just book a call with me and we can chat for 15 minutes and I can tell you if I can help you or if I can't. I'm very much about, be the honey, not be the bee. I want people to be attracted to you, and you're not having to run around and do stuff. So if you can, I feel like your brand is how you make people feel.
Yes.
And what you can do for them. So there's a bit of branding in this exercise and a little bit of mindset as well, I guess, in it. But it's, if you can make people feel like you can help them with their problem or their pain, then by speaking and telling people who you are and how you can help them, you're doing a service to people.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. Just remains for me to thank everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did. But like every single time I do this podcast, I say, ultimately, knowledge is a waste of time. The application of knowledge is everything. It's what you do with what you learn that makes the difference. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you valued it. But most of all, I really hope you used the tools and the ideas that Debbie shared today. Thank you ever so much for listening. Just to remind you to subscribe if you're watching this on my YouTube channel. If you're listening on my podcast, perhaps you're on iTunes or Amazon Music, then subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss all the other stuff that comes out in the future. And we've got about 7,000 to 8,000 people on listening to my audio version of the podcast. So, podcasting's brilliant if you run your own business. It's a great way of getting to speak as well. So thank you ever so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you again next time on the podcast. Thank you.